Good morning, good morning. I'm John Weeks, and the program is A Light in the Dark on Faith FM, of course. And you are listening to the show live, folks, and this is Thursday, the 24th of July, and we're operating live from Melbourne, Ringwood, and it's good to have your company. And again, of course, I've got Peter Watts with me as well. So, Peter, how are you?
I'm well, John. It's great to be back in the studio with you, and good morning to all our listeners.
Yeah. Look, we've got a start of a series for today's program, but before we get into it, I'm just going to find out what have you been up to in the last week?
So last week, I mentioned, I think in last week's show, that I was speaking at Keylor. Mm-hmm. This past week, we were discussing tariffs, trade and trust.
Oh, yes.
And we were discussing how the activities of the United States in the last few months, how they might play into Bible prophecy. And so we had an enjoyable time talking about that. And I think that program, that subject actually, I think is on A Light in the Dark, if people want to go back and look at the series. If you go to the website, Faith FM Australia, if you look up that website or even go to the app on your phone, you'll be able to browse the topics. If you look at A Light in the Dark, you'll be able to find that show. But that's what I was doing last week. And then this week I will be continuing a series that we're doing on the sanctuary under investigation. This is at Warburton Seventh-day Adventist Church at 11 a.m. this Saturday morning. If you'd like to come along, you will be most welcome to come and join us.
And I'll be doing a presentation in Ferntree Gully, upper Ferntree Gully, actually, at the church there, Seventh-day Adventist Church, and the topic is how resilient is your faith in God.
Okay.
So we're getting it out there, aren't we?
That's good stuff.
Yes,
good
indeed.
stuff.
Yep. So today's topic, in fact, we've got a topic, like I said, the series, and the series is, did we really evolve? And the topic, the subject, part one, is better by design.
Okay.
Now, before we get into it, there's a question we're going to ask you that if you'd like to send us a text message with the answer, we'd love to get the feedback, and we'll integrate your answers in respect of our topic that we'll be dealing in this hour. And the question is, where did you see evidence of creation in the natural world? I'll read that again. Where did you see evidence of creation in the natural world? So if you're able to just give us a comment, we'd love to get that. And the text line here in the studio is 0488 880 831. Let me repeat that, 0488 880 831. And I've got this screen right in front of me for any answers that will come through. Peter.
Terrific. Yeah, so the theme of this little mini-series is, did we really evolve? And it's stated as a question because for the most part in the Western world, most people would think, yes, we evolved. I mean, it's almost, not almost, it's sort of regarded as fact in the education system, regarded as fact when you hear news stories that may be related to the topic. And it's just regarded as a given by most people walking the streets today, John. And I would say, dare say, even many Christians who would just say, well, yeah, we evolved, that's the way it is. They've demonstrated that now, they've proven that, and we want to ask the question, did we really evolve? So on a personal note, this is a sort of fascinating topic to me because I grew up in the UK, went to state school, was taught evolution, believed evolution. I remember seeing a series on TV by Carl Sagan called Cosmos back, I think, around 1980. I think that was on the TV. I remember seeing that.
Yes, so do I.
And all of that combined to reinforce for me, well, okay, God is not necessary. I think atheism makes reasonable sense. And so from 14 through 25, I was an atheist. And certainly evolution had a big role to play in that. So asking the question, did we really evolve? In my own journey, I've moved away now from the idea of molecules to man evolution. And I put it in those terms because we're going to discuss a little bit about those terms. So sometimes, John, I think that the whole conversation between creation and evolution is often couched in this phrase, God versus science. And I'm looking here at Time magazine and the cover of Time magazine on the 13th of November 2006. That's their headline, God versus science. And then, fascinatingly enough, they have as the subtitle, right beneath the title of the magazine, it says, a spirited debate between atheist biologist Richard Dawkins and Christian geneticist Francis Collins. So this is fascinating. So the headline is God versus science, but then they have two scientists who are going to debate the topic.
Only two.
Only two, but is only one of them a scientist and the other believes in God? Well, no, the person who believes in God is also a scientist. And that is the problem with the premise, God versus science. This is not God versus science at all. This is somebody who believes in God and is a scientist versus somebody who doesn't believe in God and is a scientist. So in other words, it's not God versus science at all. And that's don't get, I want to encourage people not to get caught into that trap of believing, well, either I can believe in God or I can believe in science, but I can't believe in both because they're just, incompatible. In a way, both God and science are about the search for truth. That's really what it is about.
Absolutely.
With science, of course, a scientific theory is proposed, and then attempts are made to falsify that theory, if you like. And so evidence is brought. Does it, is it falsifying the theory or is it compatible with the theory? Okay, let's dig up some more evidence and so on. And a theory remains then until it's falsified by the evidence. And so it's just interesting and important, I think, to know that when we talk about creation evolution, we are really talking about one interpretation of the evidence versus another interpretation of the evidence. We're going to try and cover a number of topics, John, through this series. We won't be able to cover them all in 1 hour.
It's a big topic.
It's such a huge topic. And we are going to look at things like the age of the earth. We're going to look at things like natural selection. We're going to take a look at fossils, the biblical flood. We're going to look at dinosaurs and transitions, missing links, all of those kinds of things. And so I'm looking forward to this series. Today, particularly, we're going to talk a little bit about design, but I also want to kind of lay a foundation in this first part, this first section, because when you say evolution to people, I think most people think of the molecules to man kind of evolution, right? That over a long period of time, small, non-complicated matter became more complex and eventually produced human beings. Whereas I think that there are different theories of evolution. So, for instance, there is a theory of cosmic evolution. Where did time and matter come from? There's an origin, the origin of time and matter. There's a theory of that, cosmic evolution. Then you've got the origin of chemicals, which is chemical evolution. Where did the chemicals come from? There's a theory about that. Then you've got a theory of stellar and planetary evolution. Where did the stars and planets and galaxies come from? There's a theory about that. Then there's the biological, the organic, the origin of organic life. How did life come from non-living material? There's a biological theory of evolution. Then you've got macroevolution, which is one kind of creature turning into another kind of creature. And then finally, number 6, you've got microevolution. And essentially, Darwin observed microevolution. And we see that, and we'll come back to that in a moment because that's about adaptation. But Darwin observed microevolution, and he proposed that over a long period of time, microevolution could turn into macroevolution and onwards. But we'll come back to that after the break because we've still sort of setting the table on this subject.
We are setting the table indeed. Again, the question, if you want to text us, where did you see evidence of creation in the natural world? Let's hear some music now. This is a band called True North, and the track that we're playing is Master of the Wind.
washes over me when the breeze turns into a gale. I know the master of the wind. I know the maker of the rain. He can calm the storm and make the sun shine again. I know the master of the wind. Sometimes I soar like an eagle to the sky. Among the peaks my soul can be found, but an unexpected storm may drive me from the heights. It may bring me low, but it cannot bring me down. I know the master of the wind. I know the maker of the rain. He can calm the storm and make the sun shine again. I know the master of the wind. I know the master of the wind. I know the maker of the rain. He can calm the storm and make the sun shine again. I know the master of the wind. I know the master of the wind. I know the maker of the rain. He can calm the storm and make the sun shine again. I know the master of the wind. Oh, let Jesus calm your storm and let the sun shine again. He is the master of the wind.
Right, welcome back. Welcome back to A Light in the Dark on Faith FM. I'm John Weeks. Peter Watts here, and we're talking, the topic is, did we really evolve? And the subtitle is Better by Design, Peter.
Yeah, so before the break, we were just talking about the fact that Charles Darwin, back in the 19th century, he observed things like the beaks of finches in various islands, and he noticed that some beaks were longer and some beaks were shorter, but these were still finches. All these birds were finches, and they had different sized beaks, and they were living in different kinds of environments, and they had adapted to their environments over time. And so Darwin thought, well, these changes that have obviously occurred in these finches, given enough time, these small changes, maybe they add up to big changes, and one kind of creature can turn into another kind of creature, and a process he called natural selection. And today we would probably talk about natural selection as something like adaptation, where what's interesting about that, as people have thought about it and examined it a little more, they recognize that the ability for the finch to have a long beak or a short beak, that's built into the finch. In other words, if it wasn't already a design feature and they had those options, then their beaks couldn't change. In other words, if there was a stable blueprint that could not change, then they could not change. Yeah. But the fact is that within the DNA, within our DNA, John, we have the ability to adapt and change. And in terms of the way, I guess, those genes are manifested. So, for instance, we know that we change over time. If we said before that if you describe evolution as change over time, well, you change, I change. I used to be a toddler. I'm now a full-grown male. we all change over time. Trees change over time. The climate changes over time. So change over time isn't the only definition, if you like, of evolution. But what really we're talking about in evolution is molecules to man kind of change. And do we see that? And progressively over time, we're going to unpack that and see that, yes, we see microevolution, which is adaptation, change within a kind, but what we don't see is one kind changing into another.
No.
So if we think about this from a design perspective, which is really the topic for today, is sometimes planet Earth, when spacecraft have, gone into space, when we've built the International Space Station and people are able to observe the Earth from space, we discover certain things, and we've discovered that the Earth in our solar system exists in a place, the neighbourhood, if you like, where the Earth exists, is what is become known as the Goldilocks zone. And if you've ever heard the children's story of the Goldilocks and the Three Bears, you remember that Goldilocks snuck into the bear's house, and she found 3 bowls of porridge. One was too hot, one was too cold, and the other was just right. And the idea is that Earth dwells in that part of the solar system that is just right to support life. If it was too close to the sun, like like Venus, we'd be boiling, it wouldn't support life. It's too hot. But if we were where Mars is, then that would be too cold to support the kind of life that we have here. But we are in the middle of that, and so we are in the place in the solar system where it's just right to support life.
And also, when you look at the Earth, and we got a moon, if you move that moon to a certain distance away from Earth, the Earth's going to be affected by it.
Absolutely.
So,
I'm coming to the moon in a minute.
Oh, good. Okay. I'm
You're jumping in on that one, John.
Okay.
I should give you my notes here.
Yes.
But anyway, yes, so in other words, the question then is the Earth in that position by accident or by design? And when you consider a number of other factors, such as the Earth has a oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere. It has an abundance of liquid water. It has an even temperature because of its rotation once every 24 hours. So, if you think of the roasting chickens on the spit, they're slowly growing. Why do they turn them, John? Yeah. Because they know they're going to get hot on one side, and if you don't turn them over, they won't get hot on the other side.
It's evenly heated.
It's evenly heated. That's the point. And so it's rotating nice and slowly on that spit. But the Earth also is rotating at the right speed, John, to give us that nice, a comfortable temperature for life, not only to exist, but to thrive on planet Earth. So again, the water, the atmosphere, the spin of the Earth, the axis of the Earth gives us our seasons. We're tilted on our axis about 23 degrees.
Yep.
And all of those features help to support the masses of life on Earth. And I was going to come to the moon because the moon, obviously, orbits the Earth about once every month, about 29 days for the moon to go around the Earth. Astronomers believe that the Earth and the moon were formed at about the same time from about the same stuff in about the same location, right? And yet the moon is very different to planet Earth. The moon also exists in the Goldilocks zone, but it has no liquid water. It has no atmosphere, has no life on it. So the question would be, if they both evolved, John, at the same time in the same place from just about the same stuff, why is there such an abundance of life on Earth and no life on the moon? And that's an interesting question. It's a different question, though, if you think, well, maybe the moon was designed for a different purpose. And we know that the moon regulates the tides. And, if the moon were closer, then the tides would overflow the continents, because of the amount of water that would be moved. But if it was further away, the oceans would stagnate and we wouldn't have those tides. So the moon actually provides a very interesting function for the Earth.
Now, Peter, did you know that the moon is presently moving away from the Earth?
I have heard that, John.
And at a rate of approximately 4 centimetres per year.
Okay.
That's not going to make much difference.
No, but well, here it does make it as a very interesting point, because if let's go backwards in time.
Yeah.
If we said, okay.
Good idea, yeah.
You know, if we go back in the long depths of time, the millions of years that are supposedly implied with planet Earth, and we will certainly talk about the age of the Earth and the dating of rocks and all of that on this show.
Yep.
Not today, but in this series. But you see, if you go back in time, just a few thousand years ago, that would mean that the moon was practically touching the Earth. If it's receding from the Earth, if it's getting further away, if you go back in time, it's getting closer to the Earth and closer. The further back you go, the closer it is.
Yes.
Until such time as it's touching the Earth, and then it would not allow for life on Earth. So in other words, even that little detail tells us that the moon and the Earth must be young. Or at least the young Earth and a young moon will be more consistent with the facts of the observable facts that we know today.
Yep.
So I think we can observe design when we see it. For instance, we're going to talk a little bit about Mount Rushmore in South Dakota. I visited Mount Rushmore. My friend Chris Smith, he lives in Minnesota. He's a good friend of mine from way back, and we took a road trip out to Mount Rushmore. And, you've got the heads of 4 of the American presidents carved into the mountain there. Massive carvings. And, 95% of the carving was done by dynamite. But if you compare that to a typical rocky, craggy, mountain range, you can see the difference between design and non-design, shall we say. Yep. So what I'm saying is you can see design. We do know what design looks like when we see it. And that's one example of that. And we'll come back and talk about that some more after the music break.
Yeah, the music break is by Wendell Kimbrough and a track called I Am Making All Things New. So enjoy. Don't forget our text line 0488 880 831.
I saw the heavens open, for the former things were past, and I heard my Savior singing, I have come for you at last. I will wipe away death's sorrow, you will no more cry or grieve. To the thirsty I give healing, from the spring of life come drink. For behold, I am making all things new. Write this down, every word is true. Tell the world what I came to do. I am making all things new. God's holy city, New Jerusalem descend, and a voice announced with splendor, I will dwell with you, my friends. I will be your God forever. You will never leave my side. You were always my beloved. Now at last you'll be my bride. For behold, I am making all things new. Write this down, every word is true. Tell the world what I came to do. I am making all things new. the darkness, and the night will be like day. For the Lamb in all his beauty, like a torch will light our way. And the gates of that great city never close to those who come. Every nation brings its glory to our new creation home. For behold, I am making all things new. Write this down, every word is true. Tell the world what I came to do. I am making all things new. I am making all things new.
Yeah, that was a good track there. Listening to A Light in the Dark on Faith FM. I'm John Weeks, and we got Peter Watts here. And we're talking about, evolution. We're talking about creation. And the topic that we are dealing with, and this is part one, by the way, folks, the topic is, did we really evolve, Peter?
Yeah, so we today's topic is Better by Design, and we're looking at the fact that as human beings, we do recognise design. We mentioned Mount Rushmore before the break, and that's in South Dakota in the USA. And you have the heads of presidents carved into the mountain. You have 4 heads of presidents, George Washington, Theodore Roosevelt, Thomas Jefferson, and Abraham Lincoln. And it took them... It was created between 1927 and 1941. It was completed, and Gutzon Borglum was the chief architect.
The sculpture, even.
Yeah, that's right. And I mentioned before that 95% of the carving was done by dynamite. You know, you drill a hole, put the dynamite in, and blow off the rock.
Yep.
And so that's quite, that has got to be pretty accurate, and you don't want to make a mistake. So there's a lot of intelligence involved. If I were to say to somebody, well, the wind and the rain over thousands of years carved those heads into the rock, and aren't they amazing? Mm. People wouldn't buy that because the detail in those sculptures are too great. And we recognise that has been done by somebody. And interestingly enough, there was an inscription that John Gutzon Borglum wrote. He said, we're going to carve these heads into the rock so people can remember. And he says, then breathe a prayer that these records will endure until the wind and the rain alone shall wear them away. So he's saying that the wind and the rain's not going to create these images, but the wind and the rain will wear them away.
In fact, it wears them away by 1 inch every 10,000 years, has been estimated.
There you go. Yeah. All right.
And the whole area that's covered is 12,778 acres. Massive area.
Oh, huge.
Massive.
In fact, I'm looking at a picture of them now, and you've got some pine trees below those heads, and you can see the size of the pine trees compared to the to the heads. It's quite a dramatic place to go. So my point is, before that we were talking about the Goldilocks zone and the fact that the Earth dwells in our solar system in that place that's just right for the support of life, and not only life, John, but abundant life. I mean, you can go to Antarctica and find life there. You can go to the Sahara Desert and find life there. Not as much as you find in the rainforest, but it's still there. And so, we have such an incredible variety of life on planet Earth as well. Not just the land-dwelling creatures such as you and I, John, but what's under the water. I'm a scuba diver, and so I've had the privilege of seeing a lot of the wonderful things. It's like another planet down there.
Oh, yeah.
And then you've got the sky with the birds, and the bird life that's able to fly in the sky. It's just amazing abundance of variety of life. And the question then is all of that by accident or by design? And by the way, I was mentioning planet Earth being in the Goldilocks zone. We've been able to send probes to a variety of the planets in our solar system, and we haven't found a skerrick of life anywhere else in our solar system other than planet Earth. And so These days they're looking at other systems millions of light years away, that they're looking for exoplanets and looking to see if there could be possibility of planets that are like Earth so that they could also support life.
But the other thing you mentioned, the oceans, that 75% of this planet has been in the oceans, the oceans, hasn't even been explored yet.
Oh, yeah.
75%.
It's crazy, isn't it? It is crazy. So the question we were asking was, is this design or this apparent design, is it by accident or is it by design? And there's something called the anthropic principle that scientists talk about. And it's the idea that, well, the world around us, the universe around us, has certain properties that allow for life and support life. And it looks as though this has been designed with man in mind, but that's just an appearance, right? That's not real. So the universe seems to be designed with man in mind. Modern cosmology has identified dozens of measurable characteristics of the universe. Each of these characteristics are fine-tuned to such a degree that moving even one of them in either direction only a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percentage would make the existence of life anywhere in the universe impossible. We would live, John, not in a life-sustaining universe, but a life-prohibitive universe. If one of these physical constants was moved just a fraction, life could not exist, not just on Earth, but just could not exist. And so what are some of these measurable constants? So here are a list of some of them: a strong nuclear force constant, a weak nuclear force constant, a gravitational force constant, electromagnetic force constant, the ratio of the electromagnetic force constant to the gravitational force constant, the ratio of proton mass to electron, and I'll stop there. I'm not a physicist. However, these have all been measured, and the level of degree of there's not a lot of wiggle room is the point, John. The more of these they find, the less wiggle room they find there is. Yep. So in other words, it looks like the universe has been fine-tuned. Somebody described it like this, and I'll use this as an illustration. Imagine you are stood up against a brick wall, John, and you are going to face a firing squad. And they bring out, say, 30 soldiers with rifles, and they come out into the courtyard, and they're about to aim at you, and they put a blindfold on you. You're standing up against the wall, and the sergeant major says, "Ready, aim, fire," and you hear the guns go off, and you kind of cringe, waiting for the impact. But a couple of seconds later, you realise, I haven't been hit at all. And you think, well, what happened? I heard the gunshot go off, and you've got a blindfold on, so you think, well, maybe they're all just a bad shot. Or maybe they decided to turn around in compassion and fire the other way, or shoot up into the air, or maybe they shot each other. You don't know. But then you take off your blindfold, and then you notice around you on the wall is a pattern of bullet holes, and it's sort of in an arch, all 30 in an arch around you. What would you have to conclude? You would have to conclude that they missed by accident. And in a way, that kind of illustrates the fine-tunedness of the universe, because if one of those bullets was not in its right place and it hit you, you're gone.
You're gone. Yep.
And that's the whole point, is it seems that this fine-tunedness was fine-tuned by someone in order for life to exist and life to be sustained. Sir Fred Hoyle was an astronomer, British astronomer. He said, a common sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics as well as with chemistry and biology, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. The numbers one calculates from the facts seem to me so overwhelming as to put this conclusion almost beyond question. He's saying it's hard to conceive that this would have all happened by accident. It looks like some super intellect has fine-tuned.
In fact,
this.
Fred Hoyle, he rejected the Big Bang theory. By the way.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so you've got him saying that it looks fine-tuned. Now, we would say that super intellect is God. I think one of the challenges, John, as someone who is an atheist talking to somebody else who is an atheist yourself, one of the challenges for me to begin with is it's hard to conceive of a being that big or that great or a mind that great to be able to, create the universe.
Set it up. Yep.
That is a pretty big God.
Yeah.
And, it's almost difficult to believe that God is that big, but he is. And so the super intellect we believe who has fine-tuned the universe is the God of the Bible. That's what we would believe. On this subject of fine-tuning and design, what we mentioned as the anthropic principle, the idea that the universe was created for the purpose of man, or at least this world was created for the purpose of man. The anthropic principle, there was a ABC science show called Catalyst. And back in 2013, they had an episode called The Anthropic Principle. And the question was, why do we live in such a finely tuned universe, right? And so they went and asked some of the scientific minds of the day, why do we live in such a finely tuned universe? And one of them just said, well, we just do. That's just the way it is. And it's kind of like, is that a reasonable explanation of this fine-tunedness, that it just so happened to all fall into place just right for us to be the way we are? Another scientist they interviewed said, which is interesting. So they interview one scientist. He says, it's that way just because it's that way. But then they move on to another scientist. Why? Because that explanation is not satisfactory.
It's like going for a doctor's second opinion
Exactly.
with a doctor.
You're not satisfied with that answer. So you go on to the next scientist. And another scientist says, well, it's because of the multiverse. Infinite number of universes, John. That's the idea. If there's an infinite number of universes, then it stands to reason that eventually you're going to get one that's just finely tuned for life. And in fact, if there's an infinite number, then there are going to be an infinite number that are tuned for life as well, because there's an infinite number. So it kind of interesting. Now, what's interesting about that is we have no evidence for the multiverse.
No.
The only universe we have evidence for is the one we're living in. And we are trying to explain the one we're living in. And it strikes me as interesting that in order to avoid the possibility that it could be God who fine-tuned the universe, we're more willing to go outside of our own universe to say there's infinite numbers of universes and we just happen to be one that has life on it.
Yes, it's an idea.
It's an idea that is in place of an admission that, well, maybe it's fine-tuned because it is fine-tuned by someone. And they weren't satisfied with that, so they moved on to the next scientist who says, John, I've heard this, and you've heard this one. We are really only a virtual reality program.
Yes.
That you and I are not real, John.
Like the Matrix.
Correct. That we're just a reality program, and maybe we'll come back and talk about that, because that in itself is an interesting one. But this was on a science show, John, about why the fine-tunedness of the universe.
They were obviously exploring ideas, etc. Let's hear another track of music, and this is by the Rochesters, and the track is called His Eyes. Listening to Light in the Dark on Faith FM.
Sometimes his eyes were gentle and filled with laughter. Sometimes they cried. Sometimes there was a fire of holy anger in Jesus' eyes. But the eyes that saw hope in the hopeless, that saw through the fall to the need, are the same eyes that look down from heaven into the deepest part of you and me. And his eyes are always upon us. His eyes never close in sleep. Sometimes his voice comes calling like rolling thunder or like driving rain. And sometimes his voice is quiet and we start to wonder if he knows our pain. But he who spoke peace to the water cares more for our hearts than the waves. And the voice that once said, "You're forgiven," still says you're forgiven today. Today. Sometimes I look above me and stars are shining and I feel so small. How could the God of heaven and all creation know I'm here at all? But then in the silence he whispers, "My child, I created you too, and you're my most precious creation. I even gave my son for you, and his eyes are always upon us. His eyes never close in sleep, and no matter where you go, you'll always be in his eyes. No matter where you go, you'll always be in his eyes. Sometimes his eyes were gentle and filled with laughter.
Another good track there. You're listening to A Light in the Dark on Faith FM. And the topic is, did we really evolve? And we're talking on the subtopic, if you like, better by design. Now, we have a question. Where do you see evidence of creation in the natural world? If you've got an answer, or if you've got any comment about the topic that we're dealing with today, which may confuse you, you may have a confusing mind about this whole subject. It is a big subject, but you can text us and we'll look at it and address it, etc. So the text line in the studio is 0488 880 831. We also have a book offer as well, and the book offer is a free special offer, and it's called Creation and Evolution by the author Dwight K. Nelson. If you want that copy of the book, again, text us 0488 880 831. But on this occasion, you've got to put the code ALD69. And by doing that, our team will be able to organise that book to be sent to you. Peter.
Yeah, okay. So we were talking about Better by Design, and we were talking a little bit about this ABC Catalyst Science show where they'd asked the question, why do we live in such a finely tuned universe? And one scientist just said, we just do, this is the way it is. Another had said, because of a multiverse. Another had said, we are really only a virtual reality program. But I think that most people live in such a way that they know they live in a physical world. They know they're real. They know the people around them, they're real. They know their parents are real. They know their children are real. The dog and the cat are real. I think that the idea that, we're just dreaming this somewhere, in a capsule or something.
Or we're part of a virtual world that was created.
We're part of a virtual world. We don't actually have consciousness.
And that was heavily influenced back in 1999 when there was a movie called The Matrix that came out.
That's right.
That changed people's ideas and I think for the bad, for the worse.
Well, actually...
Or it made them think about God himself.
Yeah, when you think about it, the Bible is a very interesting story because... Yes, we have reality here, but the Bible talks about a greater reality that we don't even see.
Yes.
So there is a spiritual realm that is even beyond the physical realm that we know, knocking on the table here, John.
That's right.
But, so there is something interesting about that question. But I think that we recognize that we are actually real. And what's interesting, and another scientist they asked was, our descendants in the distant future travelled back in time and tinkered with the laws of physics of the Big Bang.
Yeah.
Now, that's an interesting one. That's for Doctor Who fans, this is a timey-wimey one where
it is. It
the
does your
idea,
head in.
yeah, it does your head. It's a paradox where you've got to get to the future to travel back in time to get to the start. So how do you get there in the first place?
I did on another radio station. I did this topic for an hour, and it's so many paradoxes involved. So many.
But do you know what was fascinating to me, John? So you had those 4 basic answers to the question, why do we live in such a finely tuned universe? The one answer that they did not explore and would not explore was maybe it was fine-tuned by someone, which is God. They wouldn't even explore that. And to me, I think that is avoiding the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Really. When you were asking people to text in, and I would love for people to text in, maybe you have a question. And, you mentioned, John, that maybe you're confused about this topic. There may be people who are absolutely confident about this topic, that evolution is true and that's all there is to it. And they may have questions for us, and I would love to hear them because
too.
that would have been my approach and probably yours too, that I certainly would have said, well, evolution's the way we all got here. End of story. There's no further need for conversation. But I actually think that we, in our own experience, we don't find that satisfying in terms of the fact that ultimately we would just be only animals, John, that we would have no more value than a cockroach, and I think we do have value greater than a cockroach.
Very much so, very much so. I mean, I don't know what quote you got there from Richard Dawkins. He's a famous evolutionary biologist and professor at the Oxford University. He said, the universe is nothing but a collection of atoms in motion. Human beings are simply machines for propagating DNA. What do you think of that statement, Peter?
Well, I think that's a false statement, John.
Yes.
We're going to actually come on to DNA in a minute.
Okay.
What are we looking at? We're in the final quarter, aren't we?
Yeah.
So maybe I'll do that now, and I'll come back to what I was going to talk about. So there was a fellow by the name of Anthony Flew, and he was a vocal defender of atheism, and he thoroughly believed in atheism for decades of his life. But then he changed his mind, and he wrote a book called There is no God, and he scribbles out no and puts A. So there is a God, how the world's most notorious atheist changed his mind. And he says in his book, what I think the DNA material has done is that it has shown, by the almost unbelievable complexity of the arrangements which are needed to produce life, that intelligence must have been involved in getting these extraordinarily diverse elements to work together. It has become inordinately difficult even to begin to think about constructing a naturalistic theory of evolution of that first reproducing organism. The only satisfactory explanation of such end-directed, self-replicating life as we see on Earth is an infinitely intelligent mind. And he says, this is the line I want people to catch. He says, I had to go where the evidence leads. And I really respect Anthony Flew for writing that, because that's ultimately where I ended up. I was an atheist. I had an encounter with God. Then I began studying the Bible, and I didn't know what to do with evolution. I put it on the shelf for a while.
Totally agree on that one with myself.
For about a year and a half, I sort of wasn't sure about that. And then I started to look at some of the conversations around creation evolution, and I realized that I had accepted certain things as absolute fact, which when tested under scrutiny actually didn't stand up. And so I think it was important that those conversations were had, and certainly I had to go where the evidence led. And I believe that much of, when you look at the natural world, there's so much design in the natural world, and we'll explore some of that as we go through this series. Yep. There was an article actually in the Daily Mail, which is a British newspaper or a British news service, and in 2009 they had the headline, "Why We Are Born to Believe in God," which caught my eye, and I sort of thought, well, let's have a look at that. And it says it's wired into the brain, say psychologists. Humans are programmed to believe in God because it gives them a better chance of survival, researchers claim. The findings of Bruce Hood, Professor of Developmental Psychology at Bristol University, suggest that magical and supernatural beliefs are hardwired into our brains from birth. Now, the question is, who are they hardwired by?
So you've got to go a step back.
You do.
Yeah.
So, why we're born to believe in God, it's very interesting what evolutionary process is going to end up with you born to believe in God. That doesn't seem to me to make sense. When we were talking before about all of the physical constants and the idea that the universe is finely tuned, Freeman Dyson, who is a theoretical physicist and mathematician, he wrote this in 1979. He says, "The more I examine the universe and the details of its architecture, the more evidence I find that the universe in some sense must have known we were coming." So here is a scientist, well-known and well-respected scientist, who is saying the more he examines the universe, the more he gets the sense that it knew we were coming. In other words, it's sort of developing to the point that mankind is going to be the result, as it were. And to me, what's fascinating about that is you have a Bible verse that ultimately says just about that. And it's in Isaiah 45, verse 18. It's in the Old Testament. And it says, "For thus says the Lord God that created the heavens, God himself that formed the earth and made it. He has established it. He created it not in vain. He formed it to be inhabited. I am the Lord and there is none else." So the Bible is telling us that God formed the earth. He created the earth, but he didn't do it in vain. He didn't just do it on a whim. He didn't say, "Oh, well, I'll make this world," and man became an afterthought. No, he formed it for the purpose of being inhabited. And that's why earth is so different to all the other heavenly bodies in our solar system.
It's unique.
It is unique. And it's this beautiful blue jewel hanging in the space that orbits the sun, that God intended for humans to live on. And so it was designed for that purpose. And, we were talking before about DNA. Bill Gates of Microsoft fame, he wrote a book in 1995 called The Road Ahead. And he said DNA is like a computer program, but far, far more advanced than any software ever created. Well, here's the thing. If DNA is far more advanced than any software ever created, how did it happen by accident?
Yes.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And we can dive into that some more as we continue to go along. In Psalm 19, verses 1 and 2, the Bible says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the skies show his handiwork. Day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge." And so I think what this verse is telling me is that the more we examine the world, the more we examine the universe, when you get your telescope and you look out into the vast universe, or you get your microscope and you peer down into the smallest cell, you see evidence of design. And I think the more that we examine those things, the more we'll learn about the Creator. Tell us again, John, before we go, about the free offer today.
The free offer. And by the way, we had Sadhu Kamara asking for that book, and we'll send that out to you.
Sure.
So thank you for doing that and requesting the book. The book is called Creation and Evolution by Dwight K. Nelson. And if you want a copy, if you want to be like Sadhu, you can send us a text message, 0488 880-831. And when you text us, you're going to put the code ALD69, and our team will organise that book to be given to you. So That number, 0488 880 So thank you, Sadhu, for requesting that, and
Indeed.
I'm sure you'll get a lot out of that book.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap up here, John. We haven't got much time. But, science basically says to us these days that the universe was created from nothing. And when you say that, people say, oh, well, scientists can't really believe in that. But there are many scientists who've made statements along those lines that the universe, everything we see, was created from nothing ultimately. And we have a hard time believing that, I think, because we recognize, first of all, that humans are creative. We all make things, John, whether it's a sandwich or building a building, we all make things. And I think that creativeness that we have was given to us by our ultimate creator, the God of the Bible.
Terrific. You have been listening to A Light in the Dark on Faith FM, and we broadcast every Thursday morning at 11 a.m. Melbourne time. And I'm John Weeks and Peter Watts. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week. Bye. Take care. God bless.